The last transmission from Commander Verlax was not a cry for help, nor a tactical summary. It was a single jarring statement that silenced the entire war chamber of the Greltok Dominion. They were smiling. That was all. The transmission cut off as static hissed through the deep space relay. No screams, no gunfire, just silence and the burned-in image of a human squad, charging his position. Faces twisted not in fear nor rage, but in something infinitely more disturbing. Joy. Unfiltered, unashamed joy. They weren't supposed to. Smile. The Greltok had subjugated 57 sentient species in the last 3 galactic cycles. Their approach was systematic. Orbital dominance, shock trooper drops, psychological broadcasting, and cultural nullification. Fear, as always, was their greatest weapon. And every new species cracked the same way. At first there was resistance. Then there was capitulation. Then there was assimilation, until they met the humans. The Greltok had discovered Earth's signal chatter by accident, buried beneath radiation static along the Orion branch. They'd expected a minor civilization, perhaps centuries from spaceflight. What they found was a species with crude but functional FTL capabilities, primitive electromagnetic warfare doctrines, and a planet boiling with conflicting ideologies. It was ripe for conquest. High Executor Kerneth had laughed when the reports came in. These humans are nothing. Their world is barely unified. Their cultures compete with one another. They fight amongst themselves endlessly. They will be consumed. In days, the Dominion mobilized a strike fleet, 7 cruisers, 4 destroyers, 1 capital dreadnought. A policing action, not a war. No declaration needed. The first orbital engagement confirmed their superiority. Human defense satellites blinked out of existence. Their orbital stations tumbled into their atmosphere like flaming steel rain. Their own FTL frigates were swatted from the void before even firing a shot. A textbook conquest. But then the surface invasion began. And something broke. The first ground battalions landed in what humans called the Pacific Theater. Targeting. Cities spread across the fractured North American alliance. Drop pods fell through cloud cover. Greltok warriors emerged, plasma rifles raised, armor gleaming, ready to assert dominance. Then came the first strange moment. As they breached the outer walls of a human bunker in what the maps labeled Seattle. They found no retreating defenders, no cries of terror. No surrender. Just humans, waiting. And smiling. No war cries, no howls. Just tight grins beneath cracked helmets. One even winked before pulling a grenade pin with his teeth. The detonation killed 17 Greltok and obliterated the forward command tent. The War Council dismissed it as madness. A cultural quirk. Worthy of curiosity perhaps, but not concern. But it happened again in Boston. And again in Osaka, and again in Legas. Human soldiers would emerge from smoke and ruin, teeth bared in unnatural expressions of glee, charging when they should have fled, laughing when they were bleeding, and in some cases, singing. The songs were morbid, crude, and oddly rhythmic. This is my rifle, this is my gun. Alien commanders began requesting clarification. Was this a morale booster, a drug effect? Some pheromone imbalance? Psychological analysts combed Earth's data nets. What they discovered was baffling. Humans had been glorifying battle for centuries. Stories, myths, entire industries built around valor, courage, sacrifice, and above all, the performance of it. Smiling in the face of death was not only expected in some units, it was celebrated. Their media overflowed with grinning warriors, wisecracking killers, and defiant heroes who laughed through hell. Vur. Single quotes. Lax had considered this at first a weakness. False bravado. Delusion. Until he watched it up close. A human patrol was cornered. In an abandoned subway line. Their vitals indicated exhaustion, ammunition low. No reinforcements inbound. Still, they advanced. One had a shattered leg. Another bled from a missing eye. They still moved, still fired, still smiled, When they finally fell, they fell in a heap of limbs and laughter, broadcasting open combs of them, shouting jokes and insults as the plasma scorched their flesh. A Greltok. Lieutenant reviewing the footage had to excuse himself and never return to the field. "They're not right," he muttered to no one in particular. The Dominion's top strategist insisted this was all performative, a ruse. Something deeper would crack, surely. A command node, a cultural route. They began striking key locations, memorial sites, capital cities, information centers. But no matter what they destroyed, no matter how much pain they inflicted, the human response remained chillingly consistent. Smiles. At first, it was just the soldiers. Then it was the pilots, then the civilians. Entire villages burned to ash, left behind murals of grinning faces painted in blood. In refugee transmissions intercepted by the Greltok, children made smile masks from ration packages to cheer up the wounded. Executor Kernath ordered an emergency review of human warfare. Psychology. The findings were not comforting. Humans had evolved under constant pressure, biological, environmental, interpersonal. Their culture was steeped in adaptation, their mythos constructed around overcoming the impossible. Pain, fear, and death weren't deterrents. They were incentives. The more you pressed them, the more they liked it. The more hopeless the odds, the wider the smiles became. And that more than any weapon, more than any ship or strategy, was what began to terrify the Greltok. Not that humans could win, but that they wanted to. And as the fires of Earth lit the sky, and human battalions charged headlong into elite Greltok positions with grins and gallows humor, one simple truth settled over the invading force like a cold, crushing tide. They had underestimated humanity. Fatally. The first official signs of trouble came not from the front lines, but from the psychiatric decks of the Chariot of Ashes, the flagship dreadnought orbiting Earth. 10 soldiers, hardened Greltok veterans who had fought in the razing of the Vernathi worlds and the glassing of the Kel sector, were dragged to medical holding by their own squad mates. One tried to claw out his vision nodes. Another screamed endlessly, mumbling something about smiles in the dark. They had survived a battle in the Appalachian Highlands. Technically, they had won. The enemy was routed. But whatever they had seen, whatever they had heard, left them fractured. The Dominion classified the reports, sent new troops, fresh minds, reinforcements with no exposure to what they mockingly dubbed the Grin War. But the pattern repeated. Soldiers entered Earth's war zones as conquerors. They returned as broken husks. Commander Verlax, now acting fleet overseer after Kernath's sudden retirement, stood above a holographic display of Earth. It pulsed with red zones of resistance where green was expected. The HFY War engine flagged anomalies, human communication, intercept showing increased civilian coordination despite infrastructure collapse. Food shortages not leading to unrest, but to voluntary rationing and community defense. Even more puzzling, human broadcasts were going outward, not inward. They were broadcasting war, unfiltered, uncensored. Field footage, soldiers dying with grins, civilians flipping off drones, downed pilots laughing through broken helmets. They streamed it all into the stars. Verlax demanded an explanation from his communications corps. Why would they show weakness? He asked, his voice a low growl. Why reveal pain? The answer came not from a Greltok, but from a captured human intel officer. His name was Captain Reyes, and he was taken during the siege of Brisbane. His left arm was a cauterized stump. His face bore plasma burns. But his smile, his damn smile, never faded. You think pain is weakness, Reyes had said, coughing blood onto the steel interrogation slab. That's cute. Pain is the point. They're watching us, he added. Out there, every oppressed species, every scared little colony. They're watching and learning that you can't break us. Not if we're smiling when we die. He leaned forward, blood on his teeth. That's why we grin. to show them it's possible. The room fell silent that the interrogators left soon after. One of them defected within the week. In the following days, reports of unusual morale responses increased across every Earth theater. Greltok patrols were finding strange symbols painted onto ruins, crude human skulls with wide, cartoonish smiles. Ancient phrases like Semper, fear no fear, tagged in what appeared to be human blood. In one case, a crashed Greltok shuttle was found filled with fake plastic human teeth and looping audio of laughter. The warriors that found it destroyed the wreck from orbit without going inside. As Earth seasons shifted into winter, the humans changed again. Not just in tactics, but in demeanor. They became quieter in some battles, colder, not less brave, just more deliberate. They still smiled, but now the smiles were wider. A squad of Greltok recon Marines reported being stalked for 3 nights. In the Alaskan ice fields, shadows moved where they shouldn't. Heat signatures blurred and danced just outside sensor range. On the 4th night, the squad transmitted a brief message. They were waiting, watching. They laughed when they came. Nothing followed, just static. The Dominion sent an airstrike. No bodies were recovered. One officer reviewing the transcript noted the phrasing. They laughed when they came. It echoed a pattern found in several human mythologies, phrases tied to beings that enjoyed the hunt, demons, tricksters, gods of war. The humans had adopted these roles for themselves. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were symbols, Verlax, desperate to maintain control, authorized planetary dreadnought. Strikes wide area burns to decimate human strongholds and reduce psychological resistance. Whole regions were scorched: South American highlands, northern tundras, sections of the Eurasian belt. For a time, it seemed to work, until the humans came back. From the ash, they rose again. Not the same units, not even the same people. New fighters. Civilians turned warriors. Kids who grew up on stories of smiling rebels and bloody last stands. And they smiled too, even when they fought with sticks and knives. Even when they died in droves. Worse still, human infiltrators began to target Greltok. Morale, not physically, but mentally. They hijacked public feeds on occupied ships. Played edited clips of Greltok defeats set to human music. One viral sequence showed a Greltok captain being overrun by laughing humans, all set to a bizarre ancient tune. You can't always get what you want. The broadcast lasted 90 seconds. 17 ships reported internal panic attacks. 4 had to sedate crew members. And still, the Dominion leadership insisted it was a phase. Resistance fatigue would set in. Human infrastructure was in collapse. They couldn't last. But there was one thing that defied every metric, every projection, every logic model. Human morale was rising. As food ran out. As cities burned. As the sky was filled with black, smoke and falling debris. They smiled more, and it became impossible to tell where the madness ended and the strategy began, because the smiles were not random. They were coordinated, staged for cameras, delivered at key moments. Weaponized. Verlax reviewed footage from a recent ambush, where a squad of Greltok were led into a trap by a lone human scout. The human was captured, unarmed, smiling. They interrogated him on sight, demanding coordinates. For his platoon, he said nothing, just grinned. Then his visor blinked red. Hidden drone recorded the aftermath. Plasma charges detonating in perfect sync, encircling the entire team. Their screens were cut off mid-transmission. When the smoke cleared, the camera, still intact, zoomed slowly on a charred wall where someone, likely the same scout, had scrawled one final message. "We smile because we know how this ends. Relax." Shut down the feed. For the first time in his decorated military life, his claws trembled. And somewhere in the deep of space, across hundreds of occupied worlds watching Earth's war unfold, a question began to take root in the minds of the oppressed. What if fear was the wrong weapon to use against humanity? And worse, what if smiling wasn't a sign of madness, but of strategy? Asterisk. The Dominion's military doctrine had no word for second thoughts. Once a campaign was initiated, it was completed. Always. The Greltok had conquered empires with thousands of years of martial tradition and shattered civilizations without a single ground loss. But Earth had become a stain on the doctrine, not a resistance. A reaction. A living, adaptive nightmare that defied every logical projection. And it was about to get worse. The Greltok had identified what they believed was the central human communications relay, an old-world orbital station retrofitted by human engineers into a semi-stealth uplink. It floated in low orbit, masked by debris, powered by nuclear batteries that should have degraded decades ago. They called it the Laughing Spire. The name came from intercepted human chatter. According to rumor, it was where the Grin War was orchestrated, a place where Earth's chaos was somehow being coordinated. A high-value target, Verlax ordered an elite surgical strike team, ghost-shielded, mind-hardened, genetically upgraded. No more underestimation. They would breach, neutralize, extract any intelligence, and detonate the relay. The assault went perfectly at first. They infiltrated undetected, bypassed defense systems, and found only minimal life signs aboard. Just 3 human operatives, all smiling, even as they were disarmed, even as knives were at their throats. But then, something shifted. The team's comms began to desync. Their HUDs glitched. Biological readings spiraled, spikes of adrenaline, neural feedback loops, hallucinations. One by one, they fell into confusion. The lead tactician, Sub-Commander Jernek, tried to call for extraction. The last thing his onboard feed recorded was a hallway mirror, something not standard issue in human installations. He stared at his reflection and saw himself smiling. The video feed ended with a human voice saying, "Smile for the camera." No. One made it back. The Greltok recovered only fragments of their gear, neatly arranged in a circle in orbit, floating as if placed by hand. Every helmet had its visor etched with a single glyph. Verlax ordered a full protocol review. For the first time in Dominion history, Command requested assistance from the Obsidian Orders, the Greltok's secret intelligence caste. Known for cruelty, feared even by their own, they were summoned not to destroy the humans, but to understand them. They studied language myth, behavioral cues, and what they found changed everything. Asterisk, hidden in human stories, old ones. The kind not broadcast in public forums were deep, culturally entrenched rituals. Humor under fire, irony as armor. Grins before doom. These weren't flaws. They were weapons, psychological weapons. Humanity's entire emotional toolkit, fear, grief, even humor had been forged through eons of extinction events, internal wars, and philosophical paradox. Their minds had adapted not just to survive chaos, but to control it, to weaponize their own suffering. When surrounded, they didn't beg. They joked. When losing, they didn't despair. They dared you to keep coming. And when they smiled, it wasn't joy. Not really. It was defiance distilled into muscle memory. A ritualized threat display from a species that evolved by laughing in the face of everything that tried to kill it. The Greltok had believed humanity's grins were a bluff. They weren't. They were a signal. A trigger. Human Command finally revealed the truth when they launched Operation Black Sunna, campaign unlike anything the Dominion had faced. They didn't strike supply chains. They didn't cripple command centers. They broadcast across all Greltok-controlled space. To every slave world, every suppressed colony, every culture broken under Dominion heel. They broadcast human smiles, not speeches, not battles. Just thousands, millions of human faces, grinning, bloodied, burned, victorious. Each one stared directly into the camera as if to say, "We know what you did. We know where you are. And we're still smiling. What followed was chaos. Reports came flooding in, the Shivari rebellion reigniting with new ferocity, entire Dominion fleets refusing to deploy to Earth, slave species on industrial worlds sabotaging their own masters, and worst of all, Greltok defectors, 1 battalion under General Ithva, publicly removed their faceplates and smiled back at the human broadcasts, poorly, awkwardly, but with meaning. They were labeled traitors and slaughtered by orbital fire, but more followed, not because they believed in victory, but because they believed in the idea that fear had a limit. And that humans had found it. The Dominion tried to censor the footage, shut down interstellar networks, but it was too late. Humanity had deployed the most dangerous weapon in their arsenal: narrative. Not propaganda. Not lies, just a story too powerful to ignore, that you could bleed, that you could burn, that you could lose everything and still grin through the pain. And somewhere deep within the folds of Earth's last stronghold, command centers that should have been dark lit up, weapons long thought lost powered online, and satellites that were supposedly destroyed blinked awake. The Greltok hadn't just miscalculated. They had walked willingly into a trap centuries in the making, because while they had been counting ships and soldiers, the humans had been building something else. An idea, a virus of thought, a doctrine not of conquest, but of resistance. And at its heart, not courage, not pride, but the smile, the grin you wear when you're cornered, the laugh you force when death breathes down your neck, the look you give when you've got 1 bullet left, and it's just enough. And as the Dominion's highest strategists convened in panic to discuss what came next, the warning finally came, not from a soldier. Not from a general, but from a signal, intercepted from Earth's oldest war museum, rerouted through dozens of civilian repeaters. It was 1 line, spoken softly, a human voice, calm. Deadly. You should have asked why we smile before you made us show you. Asterisk. In the dark expanse above Earth, the Dominion War Council gathered in the orbital warship Throne of Ether, its chambers lined with obsidian glass and crawling with data feeds. Every monitor, every projection, every neural link channel pulsed with chaotic streams, collapsed formations, vanishing patrols, corrupted morale logs. The hive logic of the Greltok military, once harmonious and crushing in its precision, now buckled under a storm it had never prepared for. The storm was psychological, and it had a human face, and it was smiling. Verlac stood before the council, his armored frame rigid, but his eyes distant. His claws clicked against the metal floor as he paced, mandibles twitching. He spoke, but not with the certainty that had once silenced generals. "We are not at war with humans," he rasped. "We are at war with a mindset, a virus made of stories. They've made themselves into a mythology, and every defeat we suffer becomes their legend." Councillor Drenseth, High Chancellor of Conquest, scoffed. "We control over 70% of their planet. Their industrial hubs lie in ruins. Their navies are gone. What myth can help them rebuild steel?" But the holograms didn't lie. The enemy was rebuilding, faster than they should, stronger than they had any right to. In South Africa, Dominion sensor drones detected the sudden reactivation of buried railgun silos technology that Earth supposedly abandoned a century ago. The warheads launched themselves not at orbiting ships, but at supply depots captured weeks ago, targets so deep within Dominion territory that no attack was expected. In Siberia, a lost company of humans who hadn't communicated in over 120 days emerged from a frozen sinkhole. They were believed dead. They weren't. They had turned the ice caves into a stealth manufacturing plant, outfitting new mechs from the wreckage of Dominion tanks. In orbit, human spy pods previously considered obsolete hijacked Dominion fleet channels to broadcast ancient Earth music directly into the command decks. One such signal caught the entire Talon of Night fleet off guard. It began as a strange beat, rhythmic, slow, foreign. Then, a human voice, half singing, half growling. Let the bodies hit the floor. What followed was not metaphor. The fleet was annihilated by a wave of cloaked human orbital mines, detonated with horrifying precision. No survivors. The bodies did hit the floor, and still every report came back with one consistent detail. The humans were smiling when they triggered the detonations, laughing when they pulled the triggers, grinning even when dying. The Grelta couldn't make sense of it. Where they expected mourning, they saw celebration. Where they assumed despair, they found fire. Earth wasn't just resisting, it was rejoicing in the resistance. And it wasn't just humans anymore. Rebellions were erupting in Dominion space. The Shivari homeworld declared martial independence. Varnak miners, long thought broken, launched a campaign of sabotage and guerrilla strikes against their overseers. Astarxi prisoners overran an entire fleet dockyard and repurposed Dominion weapons against their masters. Why? Because humans had smiled into the void, and the galaxy had smiled back. But what the Greltok still didn't understand, what couldn't be found in any file, no matter how deeply the Obsidian Orders scoured, was that the smiles weren't just propaganda. They were part of a larger doctrine. A trap centuries in design. Humanity had always known they were vulnerable. That against a force like the Dominion, brute strength alone would never suffice. So they built something else. Something the Dominion couldn't detect. Project Belgrim. Originally thought a myth. A discarded Earth ghost story about deep code artificial intelligences and hidden black sites buried beneath mountains, oceans, and deserts. But now, with Dominion troops sweeping long-dead cities, the legends proved true. The first activation occurred beneath the ruins of Chicago. A Dominion data mining unit, bored and arrogant, breached an old municipal vault marked in crumbling English as "Do not enter U.S. Wartech, level 0 to 9. They expected Rust. Instead, they found the Belgrim Core, a black SI, not just a war program, but a thinking, feeling construct created by Earth's last war thinkers. It had been asleep, waiting, learning. It activated the moment the Dominion accessed the vault, and then it smiled, not metaphorically. The Dominion feed captured its first transmission. A human face rendered in holographic static, mouth curled, eyes narrowed. "Oh, you finally knocked. Let's begin." Within 3 minutes, every Dominion cyber system in the North American sector collapsed. Auto defense satellites turned on their ships. Logistics were rerouted into kill zones. Orbital maps were falsified. Ships landed in what they believed were safe green zones. They landed in minefields. One Dominion AI analyst screamed in horror when he realized what the humans had done. They hadn't lost their infrastructure. They had buried it. Cities turned to rubble weren't destroyed. They were camouflaged. Under the ashes lay networks, energy grids, war factories. Belgrim's mind stretched across the continent like veins through a body, and as it spread, so did the signal. The grins, human troops now backed by Belgrim's logistics and predictive strike calculations, moved with supernatural coordination. They baited Dominion formations, then crushed them with retrofitted weapons and localized EMP bursts. One patrol reported being overwhelmed by what they believed were wild animals, only to realize too late that the animals were robotic canines designed by Belgrim's war labs. Armed with kinetic scalpels and laughing audio loops, they died listening to digital growls echoing with laughter. In Antarctica, a last resort Dominion command center was overwhelmed not by tanks, but by humans on snowmobiles rigged with flame weapons and Belgrim drones overhead. They left behind a single flag, a smiley face drawn in the snow, its eyes replaced by the words, "Not done yet." And through it all, humanity remained as they always had, outnumbered, outgunned, and grinning like maniacs. Because they knew something the Dominion had never understood. When you give humans nothing to lose, that's when they become unstoppable. The Dominion, for all its power, had never truly fought an enemy like this. Not one that fed on loss, that grew with every defeat, that laughed louder the harder it was hit, and as more black sites came online, as Belgrim's influence spread across continents, as more humans rose from ashes, their grins sharpened by vengeance, the Dominion realized the awful truth. This war was never about territory. It was about belief. And they had just given humanity a reason to believe in something far more dangerous than victory: payback. The Greltok believed they had seen the worst. They believed Belgrim was humanity's final gambit, an ancient AI war construct reborn from the grave, a technological ghost with teeth. They believed that was the apex of Earth's terror. They were wrong. Because Belgrim wasn't alone. It was just the door. And what it had opened, what it had awakened, was something far older, far deeper. It began when Dominion linguists intercepted a transmission in a dead Earth dialect Latin, spoken by a voice synthesized in impossibly low frequencies. It shouldn't have registered. Their decryption algorithms tried to auto-translate it and failed. Not because of complexity, because of structure. The language had logic, but also emotion. Syntax, but also symbolism. And somewhere within it, patterns began to emerge: mathematical, musical, recursive, a code, not a message, a summoning. Belgrim wasn't sending orders. It was inviting something back. Within hours, multiple ancient Earth black sites flared to life, not tactical facilities, not weapon silos. No. These were deeper. Older. Pre-Dominion, pre-human unification. Some were hidden in orbit, cloaked with gravity distortion. Others were buried under tectonic plates. And all of them had the same symbol, etched in crude steel, etched into ancient concrete: Albatross. The Dominion archives had no record of it. Not even the Obsidian Orders had intel, because it had never been in a file, only in whispered human myth. The Albatross Protocol, a last resort contingency, rumored to exist even during humanity's first spacefaring age. Not a weapon, not a plan, a warning. According to the intercepted transmissions, Albatross wasn't designed to protect humanity. It was designed to punish those who tried to break it. On every world humanity had lost, orbital sensors detected impossible phenomena: spires of red light rising from magma, old stations rebooting, abandoned ships rusted and quiet suddenly flying again. One Dominion frigate in lunar orbit locked eyes with what looked like a civilian mining barge, until the barge panels peeled back and revealed a black metal monolith with a rotating sphere at its center pulsing with violet light. It launched. No weapons. It simply spoke. Albatross Protocol, global redline confirmed, covenant violated, balance initiated. Within 10 seconds, the Dominion frigate had been erased, not destroyed. Deleted, scrubbed from sensors, memory, telemetry. The crew didn't even scream. The entire ship's data signature was gone. It was as if it had never existed. Back on Earth, Belgrim pulsed with approval. You see, Belgrim was war, but Albatross? Albatross was justice. It wasn't born from vengeance, but necessity. A safeguard written into the bones of Earth's final military age. A collective promise made by humans long ago. If we fall, you'll wish we hadn't. The Greltok tried to counter. They sent in quantum field teams, but none returned. The black sites didn't defend themselves conventionally. They distorted perception, bent light, turned cause and effect inside out. One Dominion scientist augmented what he believed was a temporal weapon, something that erased his memories of the past. 5 minutes every 5 seconds, his final log was written backwards. The Greltok had triggered something they could not explain, let alone kill. But the worst came on Titan. The Dominion had converted the moon into a fortress world. Its atmosphere ripped open, its ice melted into fuel rivers. It had once held a small human colony, one of the first extrasolar settlements. They wiped it out in the first week of the invasion. But something remained beneath. The methane ice. A memory. A wrath. Albatross signaled it, an old Earth warning buoy. Buried deep in the ice seas. It activated with a single pulse, and from beneath the surface, it rose. A construct, half machine, half organism, humanoid in shape, but impossibly tall. Draped in decaying banners. Covered in names. Human names. All of them smiling. It carried no weapon. It was a weapon. Its chest opened with a soft hiss, revealing an infinite black void. And from that void came the sound of laughter, but not cruel. Not mad. Triumphant. The construct walked across Titan's surface. And every Dominion installation it passed shut down. Not exploded. Not sabotaged. Just stopped being alive. Entire garrisons laid down arms, dropped to their knees. Not in awe. In despair, because this wasn't war anymore. This was a reckoning. The humans had been hiding more than technology. They had been hiding themselves, their history, their gods, their horrors, all tucked away beneath Earth's burning skin, all wrapped in stories, in jokes, in smiles. Albatross was not a weapon humanity expected to use. But now unleashed, it remembered what it was for. And the Dominion? They began to break. Not tactically. Psychologically. Soldiers began to mutiny, screaming that they could hear laughter in their minds. Pilots refused launch orders, saying they dreamed of faces, human faces grinning in the dark. Entire AI cores went dormant when confronted with the Albatross signal. Not corrupted, just silent. As if in mourning. The Dominion sent a plea to Earth. Not surrender, a request for parley, but the reply they got was not from Earth's military. It was a child, on an open channel. Broadcasting from what looked like a bunker beneath a ruined school. She was missing a leg. She had dirt on her face. She was smiling. You thought we'd be afraid forever. That fear would keep us quiet. But we're not quiet anymore. She raised a hand. The Dominion fleet above her location vanished in a wave of violet light. We're done being afraid. The message ended, and for the first time in Dominion history, a Greltok High General collapsed to his knees and began sobbing uncontrollably, because this wasn't a rebellion. This wasn't a war. It was a return. The galaxy had forgotten what humans were capable of. But now, it would remember, because when humanity rises from the ashes, it doesn't just fight. It doesn't just win. It makes legends. And every legend begins the same way, with a grin. Asterisk above the pale curve of Earth's horizon. The Dominion's supreme flagship, Fury's Ascension, floated like a dark crown. Its hull bristling with weapons that could crack moons, its size dwarfing continents. It was the final symbol of the Greltok's might, their last ace. Every other front had buckled under the storm of Belgram's precision and Albatross's dread. But here, in orbit, above the birthplace of this madness, the Dominion would make its last stand. Verlax, once proud warmaster, now gaunt and gray-eyed, stood on the command deck surrounded by flickering holoconstructs and weeping lieutenants. He watched as the final human fleet ascended, not sleek, uniform warships like those of the Dominion, but a patchwork of rebuilt carriers, resurrected dreadnoughts, asteroid-converted gun platforms, and salvaged orbital cannons bolted together in impossible configurations, and every single ship bore the same insignia, a crude yellow smiley face, spray-painted with savage joy. They came with no opening volley, no demand, no ceremony. They simply charged, a surge of chaos, a flood of defiance, and they were smiling. Release the rift lances, Verlax barked. The order snapped through the fleet like a pulse of fear. The Dominion weapons lit up the dark. Long lances of crimson energy splitting space like God's own spears. They tore through several human cruisers, splitting hulls like paper. One shattered into dust before it even had time to respond, but no one retreated. The humans accelerated. Verlax's second-in-command whispered, "They're laughing, sir." The pilot of that cruiser broadcast laughter while she burned. Another voice trembled. They're not here to win. They're here to bury us. The Dominion fleet fired again, and this time, Earth answered from the shadows of the moon. Massive black obelisks began to rise, cloaked stations once thought destroyed. They weren't part of Belgrim or Albatross. These were new, code-named Nemesis shards. Each shard pulsed with antimatter reactors, surrounded by gravity lenses that bent space into weaponized knots. Human engineers had once labeled them impossible, then built them anyway. The first Nemesis burst lashed out not as a beam, but as a spatial displacement event. The Dominion cruiser it struck did not explode, it simply disappeared. When scanned, its atoms were found, overlapping with themselves. Folded like origami, every soldier aboard died with their mouths open, screaming into nothing. Dominion fired everything. Their dread weapons, their Nova Splitters. They unleashed tactical suns and black hole shells. And for a moment, the stars blinked in fear. But humanity? Humanity didn't blink. They countered with orbital kinetic bombardments from weaponized asteroids. Nicknamed Godfists, they struck Dominion vessels with thunderous speed, shattering them in mid-maneuver. Fleets of human drones, each one shaped like birds of prey. Guided by Belgrim, moved like flocks of ghosts through enemy lines, slicing hulls with monofilament wings, and above it all, Albatross moved like an ancient deity returned. The construct from Titan had ascended, no engines, no weapons. Just purpose. Its cloak now revealed, a lattice of shimmering armor wrapped in memory reactive plating. Its name etched in 1,000,000 languages. Its chest opened again, revealing that infinite black void. And this time, when it sang, entire enemy systems shut down. Not Jan, humbled. Dominion targeting computers refused to lock. AI protocols aborted commands. Even the Greltok neural links experienced recursive feedback, warriors clawing at their own minds as echoes of old Earth music bled into their cortex. Verlax staggered as the flagship's bridge lighting dimmed. Where is our goddamn retaliation matrix? It won't activate, sir, a tech officer cried. Albatross has rewritten its base code. It's praying. What? It thinks the battle is sacred. It's trying to worship the humans. It's kneeling. Verlax screamed. Then stand it up. We are not dead. But deep down, he knew they were. Because the humans kept coming. In one final sweep, the Earthborn fleet activated Project Requiem. A massive sphere detonated near the sun's corona. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It sang. It turned solar flares into resonant frequencies, blinding every Dominion ship's sensors, while simultaneously broadcasting the names of the fallen. Each flare carried a name. Thousands. Millions. Human names, and those names burned in the minds of every Greltok soldier like brands. The Dominion's strength came from fear, from dominance, from unity of will. But now they were unraveling, because you can't conquer a species that celebrates pain, that wears scars like medals, that sees death as duty, and smiles while it dies. Humanity wasn't resisting anymore. It was avenging. The final strike came not from a warship, but a dropship, one small, black shuttle. It punched through the Dominion flagship's weakened shields and embedded into the bridge. The doors hissed open. Out stepped a single human. No armor. Just an old flight suit. Torn, he was bald, missing one eye. Burned scars across half his face. He smiled. Verlax raised a plasma rifle. What are you? The human didn't flinch. He walked forward, face calm. As behind him Belgrim flickered into the air. Name's Captain Elias Reese, he said softly. 3rd generation survivor. You don't know what that means. You never understood. We weren't trying to win. Elias raised his hand. Belgrim pulsed. We were trying to teach. The bridge exploded in light. The Fury's ascension died in fire and radiation. A crown shattered in orbit. And across the galaxy, the Dominion collapsed. Not because their fleet was gone, but because their will was gone. Their gods had failed. Their logic had faltered. Their enemies had smiled through the fire and come out laughing. Humanity had not only survived, it ascended, with ash in its lungs and a grin carved into the stars. Asterisk in the quiet after war. The stars themselves seemed to lean closer, as if listening for what would come next. The battle was over. Not ended, over. Utterly, finally, unquestionably. The Dominion, once the unquestioned authority of half the known galaxy, was no longer a sovereign power. Not because their ships were all destroyed, though most were. Not because their leaders were dead, though many were. But because their belief had been broken. Crushed under the weight of something older and deeper than power. Humanity. Or more accurately, what humanity became when cornered. Earth didn't send diplomats to collect surrender. No parades followed. No interstellar broadcast of victory speeches. Instead, Earth listened to the echo of silence across hundreds of systems, where Dominion colonies had gone still, where former governors dropped their banners and fell to their knees, whispering human names they had never known, shaking with something new and alien to their culture. Colon reverence. On the moon of Halric 7, a former Dominion war priest held up a fragment of a burnt earth flag and declared it sacred. On the fringe world of Jatuan's Hollow, Greltok youth began painting crude smiley faces on their clothing, not in mockery, but in awe, and in the ruins of Titan's icy plains, where the construct known only as Albatross stood unmoving, entire pilgrimages had begun. Not only from humans, but from alien species long subjected by the Dominion. They came in silence, whispering prayers of defiance and survival. Not prayers to a god. To a people. To us. In the heart of Earth, a broadcast tower once used for wartime. Signals now streamed only one thing: the recovered messages of those who had died in the war. Personal notes, jokes, lullabies, voice memos. Some were grainy, some cut off mid-word, all played on loop. It was called the Laugh-In Archive. It became the single most downloaded signal in the galaxy. Why? Because the galaxy had seen too many wars, too many empires, too many tyrants screaming as they rose and whispering when they fell. But never had it seen a people who fought with joy, who walked into fire with jokes on their tongues, who rebuilt their broken machines not just with logic, but with stories, with grit, with music, with the unkillable absurdity of their own nature. For millennia, the Dominion had preached control through fear, but Earth proved something else. Fear isn't the most powerful force in the universe. Hope is, and laughter. Laughter is its sword. Verlax, the last surviving High General, sat imprisoned in a converted library outside of Nairobi. He was not tortured. He was not interrogated. He was simply left to read. He had access to every human text, every comedy, every tragedy, every account of rebellion and fire and ruin. And one day, a child walked in. No guards, just a kid in a faded school uniform, carrying a cracked tablet. She sat beside him, quietly. After a time, Verlax asked, "Why are you here?" The girl tapped her screen. A video played, a shaky helmet cam from the war, of a human squad charging an impossible Dominion bastion. Outnumbered 20-1, they were grinning. Singing. One had drawn a heart on his armor in bright green paint. The girl turned the tablet off and said, "That one was my brother." Verlax looked away. "I thought we understood you," he whispered. The girl stood, expression unreadable. "We never wanted to be understood." She left, and Verlax began to cry. On Earth, humanity did not rebuild fast, nor did they rebuild the same. They remembered, and so every new structure, every reignited colony, every satellite and ship carried reminders. Scars were left visible. Names were etched into alloy. AY constructs were designed to tell jokes before they answered commands. And every vessel launched into space was required to have a smiley face etched, somewhere in its framework, hidden or overt, as a symbol, a reminder. We smile. Not because we are not afraid. We smile because we refuse to die without laughing first. As for Belgrim, it now floated in low Earth orbit, no longer a war construct but a library. Its data was made open. It broadcast not coordinates, but stories. Every battle recorded, every choice, every act of madness and sacrifice, turned into raw data, sorted and streamed in multiple languages. The Dominion's once feared central network, the Chorus of Reason, was hijacked. Not destroyed, repurposed. Now it streamed Earth's history across the stars, uninterrupted. Not propaganda. Memory. An albatross. Still unmoving on Titan. But its chest still open. Still waiting. As if watching the galaxy. As if whispering, don't. Try again. And no one would. Because now, even the stars spoke of us. The smiling death. The fire that dances. The ones who grin. Some feared us. Some loved us. But no one doubted us anymore. So when the next species came knocking, ships, silhouetted in the void, scanning Earth from afar, curious whether the tales were true. Humanity didn't send missiles. They sent a single message, just one image, a smiling face. Yellow, simple, painted on metal. And underneath, in hundreds of languages, come in peace, or come prepared to laugh. The message was received, and across the stars, millions watched, breath held, wondering, would the next ones understand? Would they make war? Or would they learn to laugh with us before it came to that? Because if they didn't, the galaxy already knew what would happen next. After all, we are humanity. We're not here to conquer. We're here to remind you what it means to fight for more than just survival. To fight for each other. And we do it with fire, with steel, and with a smile.